What's up guys, FlamingVictini here, and today I've got for you a game from the Smogon Snake Tour. Now unfortunately, because of the replay crash, a lot of the old replays are just gone, and that made me lose my first game against Snow. I downloaded my game against level 56, but it was a bit long, so for today I'm going to be showing you guys the third game I played for Phase 1 against Leftiez. And in this game, I chose to make an interesting team choice in using Runerigus, which I haven't used at all before in SM before this game. So Runerigus is the reason I wanted to use Runerigus is exactly for what Leftiez is using right now, Celesteela, Clefable, Toxapex. Runerigus is incredibly effective at beating these types of teams because it sets up on Celesteela, sets up on Toxapex. Generally Clefable can't really bother it that much, and it can become a really huge threat. The problem I had when theorying a Runerigus build though is that in a lot of other situations it can just become useless. For example, there's a set that's been running around using Z Flash Cannon in order to break stall. But with such a set, you literally just can't hit steals. Like, the best you can do to a Heatran is like try to chip it down with Psyshock or something, and you're not going to break a Scizor. Skarmory, Celesteela can wall you for some time and allow you to stall some PP and stuff, and it's just really annoying. And you see on Leftiez's team that he's actually using a Hippowdon, which I believe is packing the Whirlwind. And if I was running Psyshock Runerigus +1, I wouldn't be able to 2-hit KO that Hippowdon, and I wouldn't be able to beat his team. At best, I'd be able to make Runerigus a last mon and get up 1 Calm Mind, but then he'd be able to go Alakazam, Greninja, and just screw me over. So that would put me in a really tough spot. Instead, however, I'm using a very different type of Runerigus set. Rather than going for a physically defensive Runerigus team with fairly bulky team members like Ferrothorn, Toxapex, like Lando, I do have a Lando, but instead I took a more offensive approach with this team. I am using Spikes with my Runerigus on Greninja because Runerigus plus Spikes just puts a ton of pressure on the opponent's team, especially when the best thing they have to check it is a Spec Sash Greninja. You're just taking down a quarter of its health every time it comes in. It's just perfect. And I'm also using a set that's modest with Electrium. Now, I was considering Life Orb Runerigus as well, because that makes Runerigus very strong. However, knockoff is still a pretty decently prevalent, and if I'm not getting Leftiez recovery anyway, I felt like the Electrium Z would be better because it gives me a 100% accurate Gigavolt Havoc. Now, the reason why I chose Thunder as my coverage is, one, my team is Zard-Y weak, so it like bops Zard-Y, but like that's just an auxiliary thing. It's more so that I feel like Thunder's the best like overall coverage Runerigus has. Now, we've seen things like Focus Blast specifically to hit steals, and Shadow Ball to not be walled by a Sableye, have accuracy versus like Skarmory and stuff like that, and still do generally pretty good damage to other things, hitting other psychic types as well. But Thunder has a chance to paralyze, a pretty good chance to paralyze, which makes it very robust, and it's much stronger. And with a modest nature and a lot of special attack investment, I can actually KO Unaware Clefable with Psychic plus Gigavolt Havoc, depending on the rules. So it allows my Runerigus to still be an effective stall breaker. I still bop Celesteela and Skarmory and stuff like that. I still hit Greninja, which is a target of something like Energy Ball, which Jambad used versus me. So like that's why I felt like Thunder would be the best set. So yeah, my team is basically around Runerigus, and when I see this matchup, I think Leftiez has used this team before. Alakazam is a threat, but my Runerigus is just a much bigger threat, so my goal is to win with Runerigus. Now, I decided to lead with Keldeo because I figured he'd lead with Hippowdon or his Greninja, and Keldeo can scare out both. He hard switches out of his Greninja right there, so I get the feeling that he's not Scarf since I don't recognize his team fully. However, we'll see later that that's actually a bluff. Now, I Scald the Toxapex, it comes in, Shed Shell, because Dugtrio is still allowed this round. He T-Spikes, I get my Runerigus in, and I just mash that Calm Mind button. I'm ready to start going in right away. I want to do as much damage to him as I can before something happens. So he goes ahead and sets up Rocks, thinking, oh, I'll just be a Psyshock normal Runerigus variant. I won't be able to 2-KO this Hippowdon, and he'll just be able to Whirlwind me out, problem solved. He's got Rocks up, T-Spikes up, game's looking good for him. Instead, I hit him with a really strong Psychic that's doing 60%. He tries to slack off once. I do another Psychic doing 65, and it's just looking really rough for him. And he goes hard into the Greninja. Now, at this point, I'm not really entirely sure what his Greninja set is because he hard switched out of my Keldeo. And I don't want to eat a Dark Pulse even though, because I only have +1. And plus I know if I go to Magearna, I can keep his Hippowdon from slacking off again and keep that Hippowdon low, which is good for me. So I go to my Magearna as he goes for a U-turn, revealing that he is indeed Scarf Greninja, and he goes to his Hippowdon just to get that Leftiez recovery. I do have, I'm not actually AV Magearna, I'm actually Shucka Magearna with Heart Swap and Floyer Cannon. It's a nice emergency check versus Calm Minders like his Clefable, but yeah, it does have a good amount of special attack investment, so I can do some decent, I can knock out that Hippowdon, no worries, which is why I went to it over, say, Venusaur. Now, I Ice Beam and do some decent damage to that Celesteela, and I think, okay, I'll just Volt Switch out into my Runerigus and just get back right at it. Instead, he turns out to be a very fast Celesteela, and he actually Heavy Slams me for a very solid chunk right away, so that's not very good. I get some nice Volt Switch damage on the Celesteela, though, which is good. And into my Runerigus I go, and he decides to try to take the approach of beating me in a Calm Mind world, which was a very big mistake. I go straight for the Thunder, thinking that if he's really worried about this Calm Mind Runerigus, he might try to go straight hard into Alakazam or Greninja, and if he chooses to stay in, take out a Celesteela. Looks perfectly fine for me. He goes to his Clefable, does not get paralyzed, and goes for a Soft Boiled as I Calm Mind, and we start getting into a Calm Mind war, but I go for a few Thunders because my priority right now is to paralyze this Clefable, and I know for sure that I will be able to weaken this Clefable, force it to Soft Boil, go to Magearna, and Hard Swap if it becomes necessary. But I also know that if this Clefable is paralyzed, my Runerigus' neutral, about equal special attacks Psychics are going to be doing a ton of damage, and with potential Spadef drops and Paralysis, Runerigus might just win this matchup. So I finally get the Paralysis, and I'm just going to start Calm Minding. Part 1, to see if I can try to break through with Runerigus and keep these boosts and kill him or force him out. 2, to try to force him to Calm Mind a little bit more so that if my Magearna needs to come in and Heart Swap, I can get all of those boosts and potentially win with just Magearna. So if he chooses to stay in, of course, on my Magearna, which I imagine he would. So he Calm Minds, I Calm Mind up to +3 as he goes to his Greninja. Now I've seen that it's Scarf, so I know it's the best it can do is U-turn. I'm not physically defensive, so it's going to do a good chunk of damage, so I just go for a Recover. But he doesn't actually U-turn, he goes for a Spikes, which means he's going to have to lose them all, and I could just Psychic since he's locked into that coverage and Psychic hits everything. He goes into his Toxapex, hoping that he's faster and will be able to haze me, as actually it turns out that it's a speed tie, as you'll see. My Runerigus is running enough speed to outrun Toxapex by like 2 or 3 points, and his Toxapex is running 3 points of speed coverage, speed creep, so it was actually a speed tie for the haze right there, and so that makes it definitely harder for him. I mean, I feel like in the long run, my Runerigus was going to win out in the end anyway, and his Alakazam comes in, going to go for a Shadow Ball to try to critical hit me, and there you go. So he was looking like Runerigus was going to be able to win the whole game. I clicked Gigavolt Havoc right there because after knocking out the Alakazam, basically my Magearna and my Venusaur win the whole entire game. Plus, a Shadow Ball should only do around like 30% at most with the Spadef boost I had without the crit, which would leave me in a position to get at least 1 or 2 more kills with my Runerigus itself. So yeah, that was a little bit unfortunate, but it was very unfortunate. So yeah, that Shadow Ball crit makes things much harder for me because this Alakazam is a very big threat. My Scarfer is Keldeo, and Keldeo cannot OHKO Alakazam, and Alakazam beats my Venusaur, beats my Greninja if it hits a Focus Blast, beats my Lando if it gets a weekend, and my Magearna is also weakened. Now, he doesn't know my Magearna isn't AV, so he thinks that my Magearna is going to still be in range of, not be in range of his Alakazam after I come in from hazards, even though I actually am in range. I do have some special defense investment, but not enough to live a Focus Blast from Alakazam after taking that Heavy Slam and taking Rocks and Spikes. So I go to my Lando, because the chance of this thing having HP Ice is very low. I just go for a very safe EQ. EQ hits everything, and if he goes to Celesteela, it gives me a chance to set up my Rocks. He goes for a Heavy Slam to do some damage and put my Lando in range of Alakazam. And I'm just going to U-turn out into my Venusaur, absorb these T-Spikes, and the main danger here is, of course, his Alakazam coming in on my Venusaur. Now, he actually shows Fire Blast, which I did not expect at all. And he is a fast Celesteela, so as we'll see right here, he's actually faster than my Venusaur, which I didn't expect. Thankfully, my EVs allow me to live that Heavy Slam plus Fire Blast and a non-thick fat. Here I go for a Leech Seed because I think another synth is very, very obvious, and I want to catch that Alakazam, but he just goes for another Heavy Slam. And I'm down to 38, and as we actually see right there that I went faster that turn, so it's actually a speed tie, and the Celesteela is hitting 200 speed, same as my Venusaur. Now right here, Alakazam is really, really obvious. Like, oh, I want to predict it really badly, but at the same time, I need this Venusaur healthier. Like, if I just Sludge Bombed right here, one, if he chose to stay in, it could put my Venusaur on risk of being killed to a speed tie, which would be horrible. And two, yeah, so that would be horrible, and yeah, like, coming in on stuff, it would just be an absolute pain to get my Venusaur back up. I wouldn't necessarily be able to come in on the Celesteela anymore. It was just not possible, so I needed to have, like, Synthesis the turn he stayed in Heavy Slammed and Leech Seeded on the turn he switched out, or something along those lines. But he comes in on my Venusaur, so I have to sack my Lando. My Lando no longer has any use. And I'm going to go to my Magearna and bluff the AV, convince him to switch out. I think I just go straight for a Flora Cannon right here if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I should have just Volt Switched. Probably Volt Switching plus going to Keldeo would have knocked out Alakazam. But I just Flora Cannon in case he stayed in. Because his Celesteela is faster, I have to hard switch out my Magearna. But this is actually an advantage to an extent that I didn't Volt Switch and knock out his Celesteela, because it gives me a chance to lay up Spikes. And that Spikes is really, really helpful because it means now that my Keldeo's Hydro Pump can take out that Alakazam. So I was threading a very thin line right there. So maybe actually it was better that I didn't Volt Switch. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I was really, it was obviously very tough to like get Runerigus that was going to sweep his entire team to get crit that early on from a single Shadow Ball. Very, very low chances of that, like 1/16 obviously, but like, yeah, it's a rough thing to go from absolutely winning, very small chance of losing, to suddenly things are looking really, really bad. Really big change. But I get up those Spikes, go into my Keldeo, click Pump. I have no other choice. Pump's the only move that'll KO the Clefable, and it's the only move that'll KO Alakazam, I think, at that range. I think Scald doesn't KO, and I'm running Scald because it helps with Scizor. Oh yeah, another reason for Electrium Rioni. +1 Z Thunder with my special attack investment, KO Scizor after Rocks. So that's another reason. Anyway, right here was a very... I'm going to go back, actually, and go back to what happens after I kill this. So his Clef comes in, right? And this is a very key turn. I can switch to my Venusaur and start trying to beat this Clef. Now, in his mind, this Calm Mind Clef is already a win con for him, because it can beat Venusaur. It's going to have to get through some early paralyses and then avoid 16 Sludge Bombs chance to crit, which is, like, I think around 70% chance to crit one of 16 Sludge Bombs. Plus, he doesn't know that my Magearna has Hard Swap because he thinks it's AV. So, this Clefable definitely has a chance to win, but he probably wants to, like, if his Alakazam is also very dangerous to me, and every time he gets his Alakazam in on something that's not Keldeo, he gets a kill. So he wants to maximize that as much as possible. Now, I have two options here. I don't want to hard to my Magearna, because if he does double, well, if he does double, then I have to sack Magearna anyway, because I can't save Magearna and sack Venusaur. Because if I do that, then I think then he no longer has any reason to Calm Mind with this Clefable, and I won't be able to switch into it and be able to beat Greninja plus Clefable, as my Magearna will be too low to handle the Clefable. The only way my Magearna can handle the Clefable is if I have both my Venusaur and the Magearna, and if I have both my Venusaur and the Magearna, and I use my Venusaur to potentially beat the Clefable, force him to Calm Mind a bunch, then bring in my Magearna on the soft boiled and then hard swap and live his attack because of my boosts. Presuming he would go for Moonblast at that point, because he wouldn't expect hard swap and wouldn't want to miss Fire Blast and wanted to minimize risks of crits. So to do that, that would mean that, that would mean I have to switch to Venusaur here and he stays in, and then I don't let him switch out freely. Or I could choose to predict his Alakazam to switch in right here on a double, trying to predict my switch to Magearna or Venusaur and Hydro Pump straight there. So definitely a very risky play. If I Hydro Pump and he just the other thing that he has the paralysis, so I have a chance to hit a Hydro Pump as he gets paralyzed on a Moonblast, or he instead chooses to Calm Mind instead of Moonblasting, and it ends up working out for me. The risk here, however, is that if I fail to pull that off, then I will just simply lose to his if I get that play wrong, I'll simply lose to his Alakazam. Whereas I can potentially make the play later and it'll still work out. So I'll show you what I mean. So by choosing to switch, if he double switches, we're basically agreeing to trade off one Mon. I'm going to lose my Magearna, he's going to lose his Greninja if he chooses to double. So he does choose to double right here to Alakazam. If he had stayed in, it would have put me in a good position because it gave me a chance to synthesis up with my Venusaur, throw out a bunch of Sludge Bombs, and if his Calm Minds got out of hand, I still have the option to reset it with Magearna's Hard Swap. So he goes into Alakazam, pulls that double, so I have to sack my Magearna. Now my Venusaur has taken a little bit more chip as well, but after my Venusaur takes, or actually I'll discuss that right after this. So I go to my Keldeo, I'm clicking Hydro Pump straight. He's going to go to his Greninja. He doesn't want to go hard to Lefable because it'll get 2 KO'd by Pump. I hit my first Pump. He goes for his own Pump to damage my Keld, and I hit my next Pump. So his Gren's out. Now why does this matter? My Venusaur has a chance to live his Alakazam's Psychic, and after that Hazard's damage, kill it with Sludge Bomb. So if I Hydro Pump on this Clefable as it knocks me out with Moonblast, I can go to my Venusaur, Synthesis, and potentially live a Psychic, and KO his Alakazam with Sludge Bomb, and then have the chance of Venusaur versus Clefable 1v1. So I make the play of staying in to Hydro Pump here. If I made this play earlier and I got it wrong, if I got it wrong, I would have straight up lost, because he can always chip my Venusaur with his, with Leech Seed. Potentially I'd still have a chance to win, but it'd be much more difficult, because if he gets an Alakazam, Psychics, KOs my Psychics, I KO his Alakazam. Even if I live, he has his Greninja to pick off my Venusaur. So this way, if I manage to live a Psychic with my Venusaur and knock out his Alakazam, he doesn't have a Greninja to knock me out, so I can potentially win the 1v1 versus Clefable. So he does pull the double into the Alakazam. I hit that Hydro Pump, and now I'm going to go straight to my Venusaur, because risking a Hydro Pump miss on this Clefable to do a bit more than 50% is just not worth it, and so just soft boiled it up anyway. And if he does get paralyzed, then I have to hit 2 pumps anyway. So I go hard into my Venusaur and start throwing out Sludge Bombs. Now you see the first Sludge Bomb doing 43. It's a decent chunk. After the second Calm Mind with the paralysis, I'll be able to knock him out. Oh, actually I won't be able to knock him out, but I'll need another paralysis. So he had 3 turns without any paralysis. I'm going to go for another Sludge Bomb as he goes for another Calm Mind. That's 4 turns without paralysis. I go for another Sludge Bomb, 5 turns without paralysis. I Synthesis right here because now he's starting to boost up and I need to heal myself up anyways. He actually shows Fire Blast, doing a bit less than half. I think that's, let's see how many turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 turns without any paralysis. I go for another Sludge Bomb, and first turn of paralysis. So he went 7 turns without paralysis. Now I get a lucky streak. Yeah, I'm doing 23% with Sludge Bombs. That's barely anything, but I managed to get him paralyzed 1, 2, 3 times in a row. I needed 1 more time to get a paralysis, and nope. He gets that soft boiled up right at the end. So I think I got 3 out of 10 3 out of 10 paralysis, which is overall about I guess decent. There's some variation due to the small sample size, but it should be around 25%. I go for another, I think this is 13 turns now. He goes for another Fire Blast, doing a little bit more than half. I Synthesis up. He Calm Minds up again. I'm going for more Sludge Bombs. He Soft Boils up again. As you can see, the amount of paralysis that I'm getting is less and less and less. He's just going for a Moonblast now because it's doing a ton of damage. I get a special attack drop. I Synthesis up. I have very few Sludge Bombs left. I've been hitting a ton and crit none. If I crit a Sludge Bomb, we saw the first Sludge Bomb at +1 did around 40%, which meant that a crit Sludge Bomb would do around 90%, which means that I would be able to KO him with a crit Sludge Bomb plus regular Sludge Bomb most likely. I get 1 paralysis, but at this point it's useless because I'm doing 12% with my Sludge Bombs, and it's literally just, can I crit him or not? I think this is my last Sludge Bomb, and no crit. Yep, that was my last Sludge Bomb, no crit, and he KOs my Venusaur. I go for Keldeo's Hydro Pump, maybe critting plus paralyzing, but nope. And that's the game. So yeah, this was a pretty rough game in terms of RNG. My Runerigus got crit with a single Shadow Ball, whereas I couldn't crit 16 Sludge Bombs on a paralyzed Clefable. Crit 1 of 16 Sludge Bombs on a paralyzed Clefable, there you go. Yeah, really rough. His Celesteela being faster than my Magearna definitely made things harder, but of course that crit was just killer. And it feels sort of bad that I had predicted Leftiez to bring another bulky sort of team. He'd been using a lot of fat stuff like Scizor, Zapdos, Dugtrio, and then random Chandelure, fat Tapu Bulu thing he brought versus EO. He'd been using these sort of Clef, Celepex, Hippo teams, and I just felt like Runerigus would just completely shred through all that passive stuff. I got perfect matchup with Runerigus, and it just got crit. That's the risk. That's the risk you take when bringing bulky setup mons. I mean, the risk I brought, the risk was very, very small, and he also had that same risk. My chances of winning that endgame were pretty high, around 70%, maybe even a bit more with paralysis considered. He just got the better end of the lucky stick, and there's not much I could do about that. Factoring in the chance of him critting my Runerigus, this game was probably won over 90% of the time for me. I don't know the exact, I'm not going to do the exact math, but it's still a game I can be proud of because I prepared for it well, had a good matchup, and I played it to the best of my abilities. Even after a game-changing crit almost took away the entire game for me, I still fought back and gave myself greater than 50% chance of winning this game. So yeah, anyway, never give up, don't tilt. That's the biggest advice you can have in a game, is don't tilt. In the past, like I remember when I played Relis in World Cup, and I did the opposite of tilt. Like I got so excited after I HP Electric his Pelipper that I lost focus on the game and made the wrong move versus his Shift Gear Magearna. So like, always stay focused on the game, and it's never over until it's really over. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.